Empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? First 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go. Welcome to the Scoop World Order Mat Drills edition. Today we're going to discuss a topic that I think people this time of year have heard about. They might not be sure what it is, what it means, why they suck, kind of the genesis of it all. So bring in my partner in crime, Nevada. Nevada, how are you today?
Doing good, doing better than the guys doing mat drills, I can tell you that.
I'm telling you, they were brought in 2012 by Urban, but they go all the way back to Bobby Bowden at Florida State in the 90s and 80s. And what do you know when you think of the term mat drill, Nevada? What do you know about it? What have you heard about it? What questions do you have about it?
Well, I mean, I've got so many questions because obviously the connotation is some sort of hardcore physical activity involving mats and cones and stations and people and puke and all sorts of things like that. So that's really the extent of my knowledge. So maybe you can kind of fill us in on what they are and why they're so hard and why they're so different than any other day at the Woody Hayes.
Yeah, they're kind of a team building exercise in the same way that Hell Week is for the Navy SEALs or basic training is for the Army. It's just like one of those things where it's a miserable experience. I know that they've split up into squads this year, so there's 10 or so squads, and each one is kind of a mix of young kids, old kids, offense, defense, just to kind of see who can lead. Because it's easy if you are the leader of a squad of a bunch of Johnny Simons, that's a cakewalk. But they're going to give you some guys that are, not quite as prompt, I guess you could say, some days, and some guys that need a little bit more of a. They're not quite self starters yet, so it's a challenge for guys like like Cade Stover is a guy who's really stood out so far in winter workouts. You like to see, you kind of know who's going to be a leader just based on last year and projecting who's going to be a year older. The seniors and the early entrants are gone now. So this is kind of the first look you have at the new team. But yeah, this is a good time for guys like Cade Stover to step up and show their leadership potential, because you've got, how do they deal with when a kid is late or a kid doesn't show up to a workout, and then, the whole team gets gutted because of that kid skipping a workout? Like, do you blame the kid? Do you get upset at the kid? Do you try to love them up? Do you offer to pick them up every day? There's a lot of different ways to lead, and a lot of it is just seeing who can be the guys you can count on when stuff gets hard, like halftime of the Utah game, for instance. So, what in your experience, you've heard about some leaders at Ohio State. Who are some guys you've heard of that have really stepped up through the winter and even in the past, guys that you were like, yeah, those guys really developed during the winter time?
Well, one of the guys I'm looking forward to taking a big step forward this year is Jack Sawyer. Jack's a guy that came in with a lot of expectations last year, and I think he had an okay season, not a great season, an okay season. Looked a little light there, at the defensive end position, got thrown around a little bit by some of the bigger offensive tackles. But he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to big things this year. I think he's a guy that's stepped up as a team leader, and certainly a guy that the other players have a tremendous amount of respect for. Another guy is C.J. Stroud. Obviously, C.J.'s kind of a quiet guy. He's not really one of those yell, holler guy type of leaders. But after the Rose Bowl, he's got kind of a different air to him, a little bit more swagger. That's what throwing for 10,000 yards in a game will do. It'll increase your confidence level, and I think he's a guy that people have really looked up to through the beginning of winter workouts, and a guy that I'm expecting big things out of. And then a wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy who's had 3 touchdown catches in the Rose Bowl, and he's not the youngster anymore. He's a sophomore this year. He's a guy who came in already with an NFL ready body, but he's a guy that is really is just going to be a tremendous player at Ohio State, and a tremendous leader, and a guy who's already demonstrating leadership in the classroom, in the weight room, and certainly on the field as well. So those are my 3 picks for the unsung young guys looking to step up and lead this team. And I think it's going to be a team that is dominated by younger guys because the younger guys are really the best players on the team, and that's what makes this team a little bit unusual.
Yeah, and I think that was probably our biggest deficit last year was having a lack of vocal leadership that held guys accountable. We had some good leaders, more on the quiet side, and sometimes you need guys to get out of their comfort zone and be a little bit more vocal. I remember when Troy Smith left, and we had some really good leaders in '05 and '06, and then all of a sudden I was the only old guy left, so I kind of had to do it. I never really wanted to do it, but I had to be the guy that did it. So it was a little bit of a different deal. But I think CJ especially given the fact this will likely be his last year. He went to the Super Bowl with super aged David Mugliata, who has Jalen Ramsey. He was with Justin Fields, Michael Thomas. So obviously he's already got kind of the wheels in motion to take the next step to the NFL. And I think one of the things people want to know is what kind of leadership is he going to bring as a young kid, a redshirt sophomore who's likely going to take the leap. It didn't work out great for Dwayne Haskins. So it's going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to be questioning to see if he is that vocal leader and he is the alpha male like a Joe Burrow turned out to be, or is he not? So I think that he's got to be more vocal and really lead this offense. So something that sometimes it's easier to show it than to tell it that I thought we could do is cue up our beautiful film room, and I have multiple videos of what's going on with Matt drills. Obviously here's Trey Henderson. Here's the guys all dressed out. Something that's really interesting that we've really made a big push on is these guys all have these catapult devices, and with these catapult devices, it monitors their heart rate, their steps. It's kind of like a super version of a of like a Fitbit or whatever, but you wear it on your chest, and there's a little chip in it, and the coaches afterwards they get this readout of okay, this is how many steps this kid took, this heart rate was at, and it's really a neat way to see what kids are really putting out the most, who's hitting the highest speed. So this is this doesn't look like a drill when you look at it just from this little quick shot that they give, but you see our Rose Bowl MVP here, and they're in a drill that they call football position. And football position is something Urban loved. And it's kind of akin to like the old wall sit that you did in like seventh grade basketball, where they'd have you sit against the wall for 2 minutes, and they'd be counting down and whatever. So they basically they want you to work. This is kind of a little bit better. You get that outside curve of the back, knees bent, chest up, and you have to hold it for a hot minute. And this is the lactic acid is burning in your legs. It's tough. The coaches all walk around kind of screaming at you, telling you to hold the position, because the football position is kind of, as we've become more spread oriented, it's kind of, I guess, evolved to the point where it's not as natural as it used to be. So it's something that they're really stressing. It's been something Urban always stressed, was getting in a good football position, good knee bend, back arched, kind of ready to take on a ball carrier or a blocker or whatever it may be. And have you seen anything like this before, Nevada? I'm curious, because this is it doesn't look like much, but it's kind of a painful drill. If you try to go do this for about 3 minutes and you've been running around, it can be a chore. Well, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, no, I think those, I I think these body control positions and kind of this animal stance and kind of getting the whole control of your body and maintaining your center, and I think that's kind of the new age of what conditioning is about, and that's how they're really
Mhm.
measuring a lot of strength. And that they're looking at your grip of the ground with your toes, and how you're staying balanced over your heels and things like that. And it's a when I grew up, it was doing arm curls and bench presses, and now I think fitness has certainly evolved to power output and catapults and steps, and you're measuring how much output they get out of you in a practice. And it's fun to see. It's fun to see technology and fitness kind of merge, and I think this is kind of a good representative of kind of what goes on every day at the Ohio State football practice.
Yeah, and a big theme with mat drills is if you are the guy that say comes out of the position and you have to flex your knee, then everybody has to start over. Or like with mat drills, like if you're in line and your group screws up, then everybody has to start over. So that's like it's kind of a big discipline building activity where, you see these guys dripping sweat, exhausted, ready for the next drill, clapping it up. This is all the kind of the pre warm up thing before they break it down and they run. They usually have about 6 stations. At the end, they'll pair up they have squads where they do multiple stations of tug of war. So here you see Harry Miller. He looks extremely fit. Hoping to have a big bounce back from him. Uh, they love doing the tug of war, man. It is like something where we used to split it up. They split up between squads now because they're kind of balanced height and weight. But we used to do position groups like O line versus D line, receivers versus DBs, running backs versus linebackers. And I'm telling you, this was like something that, again, we never did tug of war with Tress, for whatever reason. It was nothing bad. Like our conditioning was still hard under Trussell, but Urban loved tug of war. Like it was something that we did at the end of things just to see who would really want to dig in and fight. They've introduced the rogue bikes, the assault bikes that these things are pretty rough to go on. And sometimes for guys that have an injury or a surgery, they can't do the full workout, so they put them on the rogue bikes and kind of crush them on that. These sleds suck. They got the wood sleds they bring in from outside, and you have the whole crew kind of pushing on that. It's usually a relay race, so there'll be another sled group to the other side. These are absolutely miserable. These are the low boxes where you really have to get under it to push it, because if you're too high, it'll tip. And this is like one of we didn't do this with back in 12 with Urban, because we had a bunch of drills that actually got banned by the NCAA that we can't do anymore. So they had to kind of improvise and introduce sleds and low box pushes, and it was pretty violent back in the day. I'm not gonna lie, and but it got us tough. But did you ever see anything like this when you were growing up?
Well,
Boxes and sleds
it
and
reminds me. There's a great trivia question about the a sport in the first three Olympic Games won by the United States where the winning team goes backwards, and they got rid of the sport, but that was tug of war, which used to be an Olympic sport, which I think frankly would be a great Olympic sport now. If you can imagine like big old guys on both sides of the rope pulling at each other. I mean, as much as this synchronized,
yeah,
flip skiing in the half
yeah.
pipe. I mean, why not tug of war? You know what I'm saying? But
Oh yeah,
no, I mean, I think that would be great. But no, these just look brutal. Just watching this just look. I'm getting tired just watching this stuff here. But
yeah.
I love the team aspect of it. I'm
Drilling.
a big military guy in terms, having grown up in a military family.
Yeah,
So anything that they can do, the military is the best in the world at building, esprit de corps and teaching accountability and never leaving anybody behind and being part of a team. So I think it's great seeing Ohio State utilizing a lot of the same type of thing you said is that you see in basic training, and that's how you build teams and that's how you build cohesive units. So it's fun to watch.
yeah. And this is kind of this is like kind of the drill that everybody kind of loves. I hated it, but it was terrible. But with this shot, you can kind of see how the field's set up. So they drop the curtain at about maybe the oh, this is at the end zone. So they drop it at the end zone, and you get about 30 or 40 yards or so of stations. So here, you see these guys have like kind of a higher sled that they're pushing, and they usually delegate like one or two coaches, grad assistant, and intern. So you see Kevin Wilson has this station, he has this station. You got your trainers with their water. So the guys generally go in like a clockwise fashion where they'll go from station, then there'll be another station over here, and it's like they just keep rotating for about an hour, and then they usually do what they call a finisher. But on this one where we're lunging out onto the mat, it's just a real basic wave drill where they'll point forward, backwards, side to side, jump, hit the deck. So the guys, they kind of have fun with like when they initially hit the floor, because they got to start off on their stomachs like in a push-up position. Here another Airdyne bike. The Airdyne's going crazy, but like these are the Airdynes. It's kind of a new addition, but this thing can really crush you. I mean, these assault bikes that Rogue makes are no joke. But just again, it's kind of giving you a feel for the intensity and the exhaustion that they try to push these kids to, because these workouts are hard. I mean, they suck. So it's I'm just trying to this is kind of an end of practice potential relay race where everyone's racing with the low boxes, and you see that there's groups, and it's a real competitive thing. Guys get off at the same count. Here's CJ's doing this is the mat, the actual mat drill where they're, they point left, right, and you can see CJ's down in, he's down in a bear crawl and left, right, jump up, hit the deck, do a front roll. The guys kind of have fun with it. The coaches have fun with it. They get to run this, but it's just a different conditioning. The guys love, like, at the end, they do the high flyer, and this is like when the whole squad's together, and but it's again, like, if someone doesn't know what a mat drill is, it's kind of a weird thing because you hear it. Like, honestly, in 12, before 12 started, I didn't have a mat drill. Coach Day's having fun with it with JSN, and a lot of times at the end they'll have the position coaches kind of lead one of these, like, kind of a cadence at the end where they'll have the linebackers coach bring the linebackers out. They'll have the tight ends coach bring the tight ends out. They have the O line bring the O line out. Across, they've got all the mats out here, so it's across the whole field. But it's, there's Mick at the end. There's Mick at the beginning. But it's crazy. Like, I mean, it's fun. They take it outside sometimes if the weather's good enough, because honestly, outside is always much easier than inside, just because you have some free flowing air. It's like having an air conditioning unit built in. But there's Mick leading it, and this is usually like right about at the end where they have, they'll call out, Jim Knowles, like Jim Knowles comes out and he brings all the linebackers out and they all get, excited, and, Brian Hartline, and then the receivers all come out and they do their little motion. But I don't know. It's just a fun topic because, again, a lot of people don't really see how the sausage is made when it comes to conditioning. And this is it. I mean, it's nothing really fancy, I mean, it's pulling ropes and bikes and sleds, and but it's really hard because you do it so fast with so much intensity that it's exhausting. So um what are your thoughts on this so far? I mean, is any of
Well,
this new to you?
I mean, you know why it's called mat drills, though, is because Matt Leinart was the greatest person ever to do this. I don't know
I
if
was
you
gonna
knew that or
say,
not.
yeah,
I just threw that out there for you guys, the little trivia.
a little
And
trivia, a
my
little
Manhattan
Matt.
Beach homeboy Matt Leinart, just see him out there, give him a little shout out. But yeah,
Oh,
no,
I don't know if he
watch.
he probably he probably got out of those every single year if I had to bet.
Oh,
I could.
I'm sure he had a
I
pulled hamstring or something else like that. Yeah, Matt's not the. When you see Matt,
he's not exactly this.
yeah, Matt is the finest conditioned athlete on the planet. It's amazing that he actually won a Heisman Trophy, and his kid is actually an incredible athlete as well. So they may change this thing to the liner drill at some point. But no, the mat drills are fun to watch. That'd be a fun thing to watch in real time, just to see these guys competing.
Yeah, it's one of the more interesting things. Like, honestly, it's probably more fun to watch this than some of the practice drills because this is constant motion and constant competition. So I actually dialed up some of our old buddies, Tom Herman and Luke Fickle. This is Texas's version. So, because I was just trying to find some different films, some different drills, different angles. This is one. I don't know if this got banned. This might have gotten banned. This was, we used to call it the bone dummy, where you put a rope on the ground and the guys are kind of shoulder to shoulder. This is the biggest reason why I pulled this film, is because this used to be one that we used to love to do, and you basically have to rip it out of the other guy's arm. It's like throwing the tire. Like, everyone's seen Joe, like right here, we've seen Joe Burrow do the tire drill, where it's two guys, a tire, and may the best man win. May the first guy yank it from the other guy. So yeah, I threw these on here just because these are drills that are super common. We used to have a drill that literally got banned by the NCAA because it was so violent. Where we had we had, basically, it was a guy would get down in like an army crawl position on his stomach, and then there'd be a guy behind him. Here's again the bone dummy. The guy's trying to wrestle for the rope. The towel. That's Sam Etlinger, the former quarterback. And they would get down. It'd be like one guy would get in an army crawl on his stomach, then a guy would get behind him, and there was like 10 yards. And basically, for whatever it was, 15 seconds or 10 seconds, you could do anything you wanted to keep that guy from army crawling the 10 yards. And I mean, it got so nasty that, like, we had guys punching people in the back of the heads and stuff, because it's like literally like it's win or loser. So it's like when it says, hey, you can do anything it takes to stop this guy from crawling, like, guys literally took that literally, and it turned into, vicious. And I mean, it was, that got banned, but it was like that was one of the old drills. And I mean, you got guys that, when you say anything, they forget that you're teammates. You forget that you're, it all goes out the window at that point. So it was something a little bit different. And again, here's the tug of war. Sometimes it's full units, sometimes it's just a one-on-one tug. It just depends. Like you can kind of spice it up. That's the beauty of a tug of war is it's easy to make it, one-on-one, two-on-two, DBs versus running backs, O-line versus D-line, squad 9 versus squad 8. And here's the Bearcats, because they do a lot of the same stuff. They got all this from Mickey Murati and what Urban did. So, again, tug of war, ropes, one-on-one, there's Luke getting everybody fired up. Um, a lot of just constant motion, the tires. People love the competitive stuff where it's like, okay, what are you gonna do to win this tug of war? What are you gonna do to get this tire away from this guy? There's Brady Collins. He's a former Fickle guy. He's a strength coach at Cincinnati. And it's just people hear what's winter conditioning, what's it look like? I'm like, well, this is it. I mean, it's not real fancy, but it is very painful. So that's like that's the they do sled pushes, farmers carries. Like this is quarter eagles, which is something that Urban loved. We do these quarter eagles where you get down on this football stance and you'd have to do, he just randomly blow the whistle and you'd have to do a quarter turn to the right or whatever. And there'd always be one guy that would go left and it would reset everything and everybody would kind of be in the dumps. But we do these quarter eagles where you get in the football position, blow the whistle, and you turn one direction, turn one direction. Like that's straight from Urban. He loved the quarter eagles. But yeah, I just, again, it's just when you haven't seen it and you don't know it, the only way you can really explain some of these drills is you got to look at them, you got to see them because they're different, they're strange. It's like the ropes, the battle ropes. A lot of this stuff is pretty basic stuff, but I don't know. It's just an interesting thing because now that it's the off season, you really get to see how teams are made, how players kind of set themselves up. Because right now, for fans, it's not, it's kind of a boring time. But like if you're a player, especially a player at Ohio State right now, where we have, new defensive coordinator, new offensive line coach, new safeties coach, de facto new linebackers coach, new corners coach. There's a lot of guys that have to prove themselves right now, because all the stuff that they had built up in the past, they might have a little tiny nub of a head start, but they're all starting at square one with Jim Knowles and Justin Fry, Perry Aliano, Tim Walton, the new quality control staff on defense. So, I mean, these drills are actually huge for them. And that's something that every day is an audition to these new coaches. So it's exciting. And honestly, I think that makes guys kind of dial in a little bit more because it's like they're retrying out. It's like they're almost getting like re-recruited because none of these guys got offered a scholarship by Jim Knowles. So you got to go out and prove that you're still worthy of it and the playing time and the spot you had last year, or if you need a bigger role this year or whatever. So like talk a little bit about that, Nevada, because like I know I get excited about that, but like think about the excitement in the Woody Hayes and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like I have a background in running sports teams, and people
Mm-hmm.
always look at like, hey, what goes on in the off season for you guys? And I'm like, the off season for us is when we do all of our selling. So like there is no off season, and for the players, it's the same way. I'm like, this is the time when they're really putting in the work, and they're making the big moves, and this is when you've got guys that are going from part-time or non performers to stars, and it happens every single year. It's just a question of who's it going to be. And as you rightly pointed out, with an entire new defensive staff and you've got a new offensive line coach, you've got a lot of guys that are auditioning for the new staff. So this is really the most exciting time of the year for the Ohio State football team. While the fans aren't seeing it, this is when the big moves are making, and this is when all the drama's playing out. So we got spring football here started really really shortly. So it's going to be fun to see who's kind of emerged. We're kind of hearing rumblings about guys that are making moves in the winter conditioning, but you won't really see it until you see it on the field comes springtime, the spring game. And I think this is a national championship type of year for Ohio State. I think they're going to shock some people, even though they're highly ranked. I think they're going to be even better than they think, and I think it all starts here in the wintertime. So it's a very exciting time for sure.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I also think that, when you're sitting in that staff room and you're filling out your depth chart and your initial rotation for the offensive line or the cornerbacks or the safeties, like, you've got guys that are, returning starters that are probably going to be with the ones initially. But it's like that second group and third group. A lot of times if both guys haven't played much and it's all new, if there's a guy who's just killing it and giving effort and doing great in conditioning, he's probably going to get the nod over a guy who maybe isn't doing quite as hot. If everything's equal and the talent is, and it's not always equal, but if these guys don't know any better and they don't see anything and say, wow, that guy really goes hard. And you're like a guy like Court Williams, who we heard about all offseason last year about how he's the hardest. I mean, Kerry Crumpton is the hardest worker he's ever seen at Ohio State. And that's a pretty bold statement when Johnny Simon's been there and AJ Hawk has been there. And I mean, I've seen how some of these guys work. So when they say that kid's the hardest worker, I mean, you expect big things from him because, if you're working that hard, you're probably going to be a big contributor. And now Court didn't do as much as people probably projected he would do, but he's a guy that I'm sure is shining during these early morning workouts. And it'd be interesting to see who else has made a step, like Matt Jones. This is his contract year. Like he does not have Thayer Munford moving to guard in front of him, and he doesn't have Wyatt or Jonah coming in, or these guys kept kind of cutting the line to take his spot, his presumed spot. A kid who's a heralded kid out of the state of New York, and now he's emerging as a leader, and he kind of has to be a leader because Thayer and Nick are gone. So you got PJ who's a true sophomore, you got DeJuan who's young, you got Luke who's young. I mean, Matt is by far the oldest guy in that room right now, and he's got some experience, got some starts, so he's the guy that's starting to emerge. And you really gotta figure out who's gonna take the effort and the toughness and the conditioning from the 6 a.m.s to the football field. So that's what's always exciting, is because you kind of got a presumption of who the ones are going to be, but when those twos and threes are pretty interchangeable, especially early in spring ball, before guys kind of solidify where they're at in the standing. So I'm excited to see it. I believe Michigan opened spring ball today, so I mean that's really early, but it's here, man. It's already here, and I'm excited about it. So final closing thoughts, Nevada. We're gonna start cranking these things constantly. But any closing thoughts on what mat drills are?
No, I think that was a good glimpse into that, and that was certainly educational in terms of exactly how they get run and what the machinations are about that. And like I said, I love the software. I love being able to go through and see that they have a visual that goes along with these audios. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate you taking the time to explain it to me a little bit more and help. I feel like I got a little bit of an education as well, which is always fun.
Yeah, it's again, if you haven't done it, or like I've literally coached it. I did the conditioning, I've coached it. I've been one of the coaches who's had to run the drills and get the guys up early in the morning, make sure that they're on time. So it's a different level. So, and honestly, it's a difficult thing to explain without a video analysis of it, because it's like if I say, yeah, they grab this little towel thing and they roll around on the ground and try to get it like that. It sounds strange, but then when you see a video, you're like, oh, I get it. Like, you got to kind of torque it away from your opponent. And, Tug of War is obviously an easy visual, but it's still fun to see the kids, really straining, trying to win those drills, because, they keep track of every win and loss in these things. There's a little GA, or there's an intern that walks around the clipboard and says, okay, Nevada beat Kirk in this one, and then Kirk beat Nevada in this one. And by the end of the day, they have a tally. Okay, Nevada won 16 times versus Kirk, and Kirk only won 4 times. So it's like, it's like I said, they always are looking for metrics to measure these guys and see how they compete and see how they do. So it's exciting, man. Spring ball's almost here. So for Nevada, Buck, we appreciate you guys. This has been the Scoop World Order.